In the chat box, you're writing, what is the difference between breathing and cellular respiration? Got a couple answers here. Cellular respiration breaks down glucose, releases energy, while breathing does not. Cellular respiration is what our cells do with the oxygen we inhale. I like that one. It's making a connection between the breathing and the respiration. Breathing is just taking in and getting rid of. Taking in oxygen, getting rid of CO2. Cellular respiration is like cells regenerating almost, okay? So making more energy. All right, now they're all coming in. Breathing, process of inhaling, exhaling. Good, 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 good. Chemical process, biological process. Good, okay. Now the next question is, if cellular respiration's goal is to make energy, what does our body need energy for? What do our cells use energy for? So I switched my question in the chat. What do our cells use energy for? It's easy to say what our body uses energy for. I think it's a little bit more, whoops, I only shared that with one person. I think it's harder to identify what our cells use energy for. So can you give me either one? What do our bodies use energy for, or what do our cells use energy for? Write that in the chat box, please. You're welcome, of course, to shout out answers. I like voices. To move, to breathe, to break down food, good ones. Homeostasis, yeah. Chemical reactions, To make proteins, absolutely. To make anything, to synthesize any type of molecule. Oh, I'm on the wrong day, sorry. To synthesize any type of molecule is going to require energy, good. Keep different organs functioning. We also need energy to break down molecules. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this difference between breathing and cellular respiration, and then also try to make connections between breathing and cellular respiration. Afterwards, I'll tell you about the gizmo we're going to jump into. We're going to use our logon from September 14th. So remember, we had two different logons. One was originally, we made this one, and then we jumped into Miss Stabler's class. I still had a number of you signing on to Miss Stabler's class in the last, our last gizmo. So that class has actually been deleted. So if you try to access that this time, you'll probably struggle. If you forget what you used, you might scroll back to September 14th. That's when we first signed up with the gizmos. So maybe you find your original login there. If you don't want to scroll, you can always hit F3 on your computer. Your keyboard, F3, will allow you to do a search for a word on the page. So if you typed in homeostasis, that should pop right up. And then you would be able to find that original gizmo. So today it's a different gizmo, but we need that login. And then I need to add a number 5. We're going to do test corrections this time around. I haven't done those with you yet. So I need to add that to our calendar. And I'll tell you more about the test corrections at the end of lecture. So do we have any questions on the agenda so far? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started on our lecture. You will find in your Google Classroom a guided set of notes. I have highlighted where you need to write answers. So if you could open up that, so you have that alongside while we're taking, while we're going through the lecture. You can split your screen, have the lecture on one and the write-up on the other. You're going to turn this in at the end of the lecture for your participation points today. So have that open. Okay, ready? Ready? Okay. All right. So introduction to cellular respiration. We should be able to differentiate between cellular respiration and breathing. So what's the difference between the two? Because they're commonly confused with each other, I think. Describe the relationship between respiration and photosynthesis. We just finished the photosynthesis chapter. So we want to make connections between the two. And you're going to do a follow-up activity today. The gizmo has to do with this energy cycle between cellular respiration and photosynthesis. We're just barely going to get into how cellular respiration releases energy. We're going to be very generic today. Monday, we'll get into the specific steps. So Monday, we start learning the details like we did with photosynthesis. Okay. So all organisms carry out a number of life processes. You'll remember chapter 1, we talked about characteristics of life. They're made of cells, they're organized, they reproduce, they respond to stimuli, they utilize energy, they evolve. I feel like I'm missing one or two. Anyways, talking about those life processes, one of them is utilization of energy, right? And so cellular respiration plays a big role in that utilization of energy. This is happening in the mitochondria. Last chapter, we were doing photosynthesis in the chloroplast, and we learned about the pieces and parts of the chloroplast. We'll do the same thing this year or this time, but we'll be talking about the mitochondria. Okay, so respiration versus breathing. Right away, we'll get into this. So breathing, you identified in the earlier chat box, is just taking in air and getting rid of air, right? So they're not the same. Respiration's the process by which we break down organic molecules like glucose and other sugars to produce energy, CO2, and water. Okay, so we're producing energy as well as heat. Our energy comes in the form of ATP. We've been talking about that the last couple of sections. So breathing isn't doing anything with those individual gases or those individual molecules. It's just a bulk movement of air in and out of our lungs. Cellular respiration is what you do with those molecules to produce energy. So here's some of the things we use energy for. You guys identified a number of things. Active transport, we just talked about in chapter 7, moves molecules against their concentration gradient, right? So that's going to use energy. Building, you guys identified that in the chat box. Anything that's synthesizing is going to require some energy. Movement, in order to move our muscles. Notice the ATP molecule here that is attached to, this is actin and myosin. You won't need to know that, but these are the actual fibers that work in muscles that cause your muscles to shorten, and that's what allows us to do work. Okay, so ATP is involved with muscle contractions. Bioluminescence is the production of light. So you can see these glowing jellyfish. There's other protozoans that bioluminesce. You're familiar with fireflies or lightning bugs. They have the ability to produce light, and that is going to require energy. And then lots of other metabolic reactions. We talked about how all reactions have to get past a certain activation energy in order to occur. So all metabolic reactions are going to take energy. All right, so any questions so far? Okay, so this is more, you can see we're moving O2 in and we're getting rid of CO2. That's happening during breathing. Inhalation, breathing in, exhalation, breathing out. Okay, this is more commonly called ventilation. So you're ventilating your lungs, you're providing your lungs with air. Then your blood supply will take that oxygen out of the air and take it to the rest of your body's cells. That's when we start utilizing cellular respiration. So cellular respiration will take place in our body cells, our tissue cells like muscles. They'll use the oxygen and it'll produce CO2. That CO2 will be returned to the lungs. The alveoli are the little air sacs in the lungs. So it's returned to the lungs where CO2 will diffuse out according to its concentration gradient, high to low. And then it exits the body through breathing. Okay, so once it's inside of our body, we're working with respiration. Moving it in and out is ventilation. So oxygen in the cells will be used to break down glucose into energy and CO2 and water. So CO2, you heard in the little video piece that we did is a waste product, and it's actually harmful to our bodies. We need to get rid of it. It makes our blood acidic. And the more acidic your blood is, the faster many of your processes will be. And in an extreme case of acidosis, our bodies would go into a seizure. So we definitely want to get rid of the CO2. Okay, and then the capillaries take that CO2 to the lungs, and then you breathe it out. Raw materials, like what are we physically breaking down? We talk about glucose, but you can actually break down any of the molecules that are in the food you eat, right? So we can break down starch into smaller sugars. We can break down fats into glycerol. That can then go into cellular respiration. Proteins break down into amino acids. That goes into cellular respiration. So just like photosynthesis made organic molecules, but we talked about glucose in general, cellular respiration breaks down any of your macromolecules, but we talk about glucose in general, okay? So you can break down glucose, amino acids, other lipids. And in the process, we need the oxygen from the air we breathe in order to break them down. So the oxygen that we're breathing is coming from photosynthesis. So you can see a direct relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Oxygen produced in photosynthesis is being used in cellular respiration. The CO2 being produced in cellular respiration is used during photosynthesis. Photosynthesis makes glucose. Cellular respiration uses the glucose. So basically, the products of one are the reactants of the other. They're opposing reactions, meaning they're exact opposites. I could take an arrow and turn it one way or the other, and I would either be doing cellular respiration or photosynthesis. Okay, so the raw materials we need for cellular respiration being made during photosynthesis. So basically you can see the CO2 going in, oxygen coming out, glucose being made, glucose going into respiration to release the CO2 that's once again being used up here. Any questions over any of the items I just talked about? So we're doing just a short introduction. So I started our lecture with the comparison of cellular respiration and breathing, and it sounded like you guys already have that pretty well understood. Now could you, in the chat box, share with me your thoughts, cellular respiration versus photosynthesis? Cellular respiration versus photosynthesis, what's the difference? So in the chat box, please share with me, what is the difference between photosynthesis and cellular respiration? Isabella's quick to answer. Thank you so much. Riley's right there. Sartaj is in. So we got the idea that they're opposites or opposing. We got the idea that photosynthesis is building instead of breaking. Photosynthesis makes, glucose breaks. Those are all good answers. So cellular respiration brings air into and out of the lungs. The respiration breaks down food to release energy. Photosynthesis traps sunlight energy and converts it to chemical energy in the form of food. And respiration extracts energy from that food. Got a few more answers. I like reactants and products are involved. Yep. The products of photosynthesis are the reactants of respiration. Anabolic, catabolic, nice use of words. They're both metabolic pathways. Photosynthesis is anabolic, while cellular respiration is catabolic. Good work. Okay, so we got the general idea. That's clear. So hopefully you found all the information you needed to fill in the blanks here. Oops, I forgot to highlight those. Okay, so when you are ready with that, you'll be able to turn that in. We talked about the gizmo already. The link is in the Google Classroom. You're going to use your old code. Now I just want to tell you about the test corrections. that we're going to do. So you'll have shared with you these test corrections. I think I still have to open your test maybe. But you're doing a CER, a claim evidence reasoning. So your claim is basically the question you got wrong stated in a corrected statement. So it's probably like the question with the answer and make it a sentence. So maybe I said glucose was a reactant of photosynthesis. And now I need to correct myself. Maybe I was talking about glucose is a reactant of photosynthesis. So that's that was a wrong statement. So now I know it's a product. Okay, so I'm going to write the answer in a correct sentence. Where did I find my answer? And I want you to be specific. So this information was covered during the Calvin cycle, the light independent reaction lecture. So not textbook, not Google search, not lecture notes, but specific which lecture notes, which page of the textbook, what Google search did you do? Okay, so you're correcting the statement in the question that you got wrong, and then the reasoning behind it. So what's the science behind the correct answer? This shows me your understanding of concepts, okay? So glucose, C6H12O6, has the CO2 and the hydrogen, CO2 from carbon dioxide, and hydrogen from water are used to make the C6H12O6. So some sort of statement that supports my claim. I made a very generic one really quick last hour. So you'll go through with each of the questions you got wrong. Assuming your statement is correct and your reasoning is sound, you'll get a half point back for each of the test questions. Okay, so you have a chance to ramp up your score. If you need more pages, just copy, paste these pages below, and you can keep going from there. Okay. So you have this, which is due Monday. You'll have the weekend to do that if you need a little more time. And then you also have, because this is a separate entity really, you have the follow-up activity that's a gizmo. Today, 4th hour, it took them 30 minutes to do the gizmo. So you can choose which one you feel like working on first. And then you'll have the weekend to turn things in as you get them done. Okay. So what questions do you have for me today?